Have you ever wondered what it actually takes to pull off the absolute impossible? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We are cracking open one of the most baffling, legendary, and heavily investigated cold cases in American history. It's a mystery that has literally stumped the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, and the Coast Guard for over 6 decades. Yep, we're talking about the infamous 1962 escape from Alcatraz. Over the last 60 years, this story has completely transformed from a high-stakes jailbreak into an absolute American myth. So let's dive right into this.
How did 3 men just vanish into thin air from the world's most secure island prison? You see, at the time, the authorities were so supremely confident in their fortress, they genuinely believed you could leave a prisoner completely unattended on that island and there's no way they'd be able to escape. Yet, somehow, right under the noses of heavily armed, top-tier guards, 3 inmates slipped away into the night. And honestly, the craziest part? The prison guards didn't have the slightest clue they were missing for a full 10 hours. These guys didn't just break out of a regular cell, they broke out of a fortress literally designed to break them.
Okay, picture this. It's the morning of July 12, 1962. Right at 7 a.m., the heavy steel doors echo. The prison staff is starting their standard morning roll call. But 3 prisoners aren't there. The guards rush over to cell block B, totally expecting the worst. They peer inside the cramped cells, and the men look like they're just fast asleep in their beds, all tucked under the covers. Everything looks totally normal. But when a guard reaches through those iron bars to give one of them a shake, the head rolls off the pillow and shatters on the cold floor. It was a dummy. The inmates had masterfully sculpted these incredibly lifelike decoys out of soap, plaster, and concrete. And get this, they even used real human hair stolen from the prison barber shop. The guards were completely, utterly fooled.
To really appreciate how impossible this whole feat was, we've got to jump back a bit to 1934. That was the year Alcatraz was officially declared a maximum security federal prison. Earning the incredibly ominous nickname The Rock, it was specifically designed for the absolute worst of the worst. We're talking highly dangerous, chronic escapees, the violent criminals that other prisons just couldn't handle. It had this legendary status of being totally inescapable. Basically, once you got a one-way ticket to The Rock, your life as you knew it was over. The outside world was completely out of reach.
And it was considered inescapable for a very good reason. This 22-acre island was surrounded by these towering 15-foot-high fences all topped with vicious barbed wire. But you know what? The fence wasn't even the main problem. The real prison guard was the Pacific Ocean. Alcatraz sits right in the opening of the San Francisco Bay. That means it is constantly getting battered by bone-chilling 50-degree water, massive winds, and these treacherous, completely unpredictable tidal currents that could easily sweep a grown man straight out to the open ocean. Throw in armed guards and watchtowers monitoring the place 24/7, and you've got a fortress that nature and man built together to keep you locked inside.
So who exactly were the brilliant, desperate minds who decided to challenge the impossible? Well, meet the crew. First up, we have Frank Morris. He was a highly intelligent, lifelong criminal with an IQ reported to be 133, and he'd been in and out of the penal system since he was just 13 years old. Then, we have the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence. They were both serving serious time for bank robbery and shared this fiercely loyal sibling bond. And finally, the original mastermind of the whole operation, Alan West. West was an escape artist who tried breaking out of several other facilities, which is exactly why he ended up at Alcatraz. Now, because West had been doing maintenance work around the prison for a long time, he knew its hidden architecture. He actually found a structural loophole in Block B. Over the course of 2 long, agonizing years, these 4 guys manipulated the entire prison system just to get their cells transferred together to that specific, vulnerable block.
This whole escape was a true David versus Goliath scenario. Think about it. On one side, you have the ultimate maximum security. Thick, concrete walls, towering 15-foot fences, and a deadly freezing ocean just waiting to swallow anyone who made it outside. And on the other side, the prisoner's toolkit. We are talking about everyday, mundane items transformed by pure desperation. They used stolen spoons and saw blades smuggled out of the kitchen to literally dig through walls. They actually scavenged a motor from a prison vacuum cleaner to craft a makeshift motorized drill. And their getaway vehicle? An inflatable raft made entirely out of over 50 stolen rubber raincoats. I mean, it's just a masterpiece of criminal ingenuity and MacGyver-level resourcefulness. But wait, how do you drill through a prison wall without anyone hearing you? The secret was their timing. At the back of each of their cells was this small ventilation grate, maybe 5 by 9.5 inches.
Because West knew the prison's blueprint so well, he knew the walls around these specific vents were only about 6 inches thick. So for 6 incredibly slow months, they patiently chipped away at the concrete to widen those holes. And to mask the scraping and the whirring of that homemade vacuum drill, they worked during the prison's designated musical hour. This was a chaotic, noisy time in the evening when inmates were allowed to play instruments. When they weren't digging, they didn't just hide the massive holes, they cleverly covered them up with their instruments, or pieces of cardboard that they painted to look exactly like the surrounding wall. Once those holes were finally wide enough, the physical escape itself was a terrifying, heart-pounding obstacle course. Step 1, squeeze backward through those expanded air vents into a dark, dusty, unguarded utility corridor running right behind the cells. Next, they had to scale this towering, pitch-black labyrinth of plumbing and drain pipes just to reach the roof of the cell block, eventually prying open a ventilator shaft to get outside. Then, they sneaked across the treacherous roof, shimmied down a bakery pipe to the ground, and scaled that massive 15-foot barbed wire fence, all in the dead of night. Finally, hitting the rocky shoreline, they deployed their masterpiece, a makeshift raft and life jackets that they had painstakingly glued and stitched together from those stolen rubber raincoats.
But right here is where the story takes a massive, devastating twist. Remember Alan West, the guy who actually came up with the idea and knew all the architecture? Well, when the actual moment of truth arrived that night, the makeshift grill on West's vent was cemented stuck. By the time he finally managed to violently break through the plaster and scramble up to the roof, his accomplices were already gone, vanished into the fog. Stranded, completely alone, and knowing the sun was going to rise soon, poor West had to creep back down to his cell. Realizing he had completely missed his one shot at freedom, he ended up becoming the primary informant for the FBI. He sang like a canary, spilling the entire meticulously crafted blueprint of their grand escape.
West told the investigators absolutely everything. The intended route was heavily calculated to give them the absolute best chance of survival. According to his confession, the plan was to navigate those treacherous, freezing waters north to Angel Island, basically using it as a brief resting point. From there, they'd use the island as a stepping stone to cross that final stretch to the mainland in Marin County, where security was, well, virtually non-existent. Once ashore, the final phase of the master plan was to blend in. They were going to rob a local store for fresh civilian clothes, hotwire a getaway car, and just disappear into America forever.
Armed with West's detailed confession, a massive, multi-agency manhunt totally exploded across the region. The FBI, the Coast Guard, the U.S. Marshals, they flooded the bay, searching for literally any sign of life. And slowly, a chilling trail of evidence started to pop up. On day 1, investigators verified West's crazy story by finding footprints in a secret workshop hidden right on the roof of the cell block. By day 4, the Coast Guard discovered a floating wooden paddle in the ocean that exactly matched scavenged wood from the prison. Then, weeks later, 2 waterproof bags made out of that raincoat material washed up on the shore. Inside, personal letters and cherished family photos belonging to the Anglin brothers. Now, investigators strongly believe this meant they had drowned. I mean, think about it. What desperate fugitive throws away their most prized, irreplaceable personal possessions unless they are literally fighting for their lives in the freezing water?
However, there was a glaring, massive hole in this drowning theory. Basic forensic science tells us that in oceanic drownings, bodies usually surface and float after about 2 to 3 days. The bay was scoured for months. The rugged shorelines were walked inch by dedicated search parties, but the investigators never found a single body. Not one. Not a body part, not a piece of prison clothing attached to a remain, nothing. Furthermore, they combed the mainland looking for the rest of West's plan, but there were absolutely zero reports of stolen cars or burglarized clothing stores anywhere in the county that night or even the days following. It was as if the pitch-black ocean had just swallowed them whole, or they had successfully executed the perfect phantom getaway.
Because there were no bodies, wild survival theories have kept this case burning white-hot in the public imagination for over 60 years. The Anglin family, for one, adamantly insists the brothers made contact over the years. A nephew famously claimed that the older Anglin brother, while on his deathbed, told his sisters that John and Clarence were absolutely alive and well. Even weirder, family members actually reported seeing 2 incredibly tall, unusually muscular women wearing heavy makeup attending family funerals. These mystery guests quietly disappeared right after the services, and many strongly suspect it was the brothers in disguise, coming back to pay their respects. And the absolute wildest piece of evidence, a photograph taken by a family friend down in Brazil in the 1970s. It allegedly shows the 2 brothers standing on a rural farm. Now, the U.S. Marshals fiercely dispute that the facial structures and ages actually match up, but the family,
They firmly believe it is the ultimate smoking gun.
So where does that actually leave us today, decades later?
Well, in 1979, the FBI officially closed their investigation. They concluded that the men most likely succumbed to the freezing waters and drowned. But the U.S. Marshals Service, they completely disagree. They boldly refuse to close the case. In fact, they have a strict, uncompromising policy just for this specific, legendary mystery. The active warrants for Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin will remain completely open until they are officially arrested, their remains are positively identified, or they turn 99 years old. Until that magic number is officially reached, these men are, legally speaking, still considered fugitives on the run.
Today, Alcatraz is a bustling national park. Tourists can literally walk right into Block B and stare at the exact crumbling grates these men painstakingly chipped away at all those decades ago. But the ghost of their impossible escape haunts that rocky island to this very day. So, to wrap up this explainer, I'm turning it over to you. Based on the facts we've uncovered, what do you think? Did the freezing, brutal currents of the Pacific Ocean swallow them up and hide the evidence forever? Or did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers actually pull off the single most flawless, perfect crime in American history? Maybe living out their days quietly on a beach somewhere in South America. Let me know what you truly believe happened down in the comments. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the impossible.